Hey GMs, do you run APs and need a place to organize your notes and sessions? Or do you create your own world and need to organize your NPCs and homebrew content? Check out WorldAnvil, a set of world-building tools that helps you create and organize your campaign setting. Create wiki-like articles, timelines, and even interactive maps for your world, and then use their campaign manager to schedule and organize sessions. Players can join your game to add their PCs and interact with the world in and out of session using the character manager and discussion boards which include play-by-post options. Check it out. Hello, Galarian. Welcome to Online at 6. This is the podcast where you get to hear a group of nerds cover fun concepts, wacky builds, and interesting Pathfinder 2 mechanics, rules, and subsystems. We'll debate, argue, make terrible puns, and hopefully produce some kick-ass content that will blow your mind. I'm Sabity, a lovely gnome cleric of Desna, reporting live from the Magambia. Today I'm joined by...
It's Green Meadow, your favorite immortal Leshy, taking a break from my world tour to talk about some cool things today.
Hey, this is Saphira. I steal at a 10th grade level, but can only cast spells at a 2nd grade level, so I'm not really sure why I'm in a magic school.
My name is Liam the Lich, the owner and purveyor of Liam the Lich's magical item shop. The DC to haggle with me is 35.
I'm Nak. If you need any alchemical items, I'm here to craft whatever you need.
And in this episode, we'll be reviewing Strength of Thousands Book 1, Kindled Magic.
This AP has been very different from any other campaigns or AP that we've done before, especially for 5e campaigns, very centered around just fighting a dragon and saving a town or without real motivation. But in this AP, there really is a lot of role playing and intricate motivations for all of the characters and NPCs.
Yeah, the first thing that jumps out to me immediately is definitely the buy-in that they work towards. And I think that's something that's kind of taken for granted in a lot of other APs I've played, wherein they'll just throw all of your characters together. And, there might be a prompt for a backstory for how everyone knows each other. But I think we started off really strong with this one, just because we came in with these very strong backstories. We had to decide why we were going to the Magambia Academy. And even in the first couple days, we weren't immediately thrown into any combat or anything like that. We just kind of had the opportunity to hang out, get to know each other. And there were some very intentional, I think, quests set into the very beginning of the AP, this first book, that helped build that team cohesion and develop your character a little more, which I greatly appreciated.
Yeah, I think because your characters are kind of assumed to come in not knowing each other, whereas in some adventures, you have to build your backstory to make sense why you're together. I think they do a really good job at introducing little quests at the beginning that just allow for tons of roleplay so that you can just really get to know each other.
Talk about the pacing of the adventure a little bit, because I think that's something that we've appreciated. Typically in an AP, your characters are kind of pulled through this story arc where things happen at a pretty set rate, or, there's a certain amount of player autonomy that's always allowed. But in this, something that I found really fascinating and fun for our group is there are weeks where we'll just say, hey, do you guys want to hang out and just not gain any experience today? Just do some fun things, hang out in classrooms or whatever. And while that's absolutely not a requirement for the AP, that's an option. And just the fact that that's available, I think, is opened my mind a little bit to how an AP can actually run and function as opposed to the kind of classical model that we're all used to.
So, Sabity, I'm not sure if this is all the, campaign pushing us or also us just trying out new things, but I really love the pacing of the opening of the AP because you are kind of going on little fetch quests for the NPCs and exploring the different branches of the Magambia. But even though it's a little slower, it was really fun and immersive to learn about the world. And so it felt like we are going, even though we're just role-playing, really. And it was a ton of fun. I'm not sure if that was the AP pushing us to do things or us just thinking of things, but either way, I really enjoyed it. It made us think of different things to do. Like I found a study buddy and, taking a tour of the whole Magambia. I'm not sure if that was a part of the AP, but I loved going to the Leshy Gardens and meeting different people and professors, but it made it a lot of fun.
So Sebade, I'm very interested from a player perspective. How much of it were we kind of just improvising as we were going along, and how much freedom do you feel like you had within this within the AP to let us kind of figure out what we wanted to do?
Yeah, I'm actually really glad to hear that you couldn't tell the difference between what was something that the adventure had come up with and something that I had just kind of encouraged you guys to do, or something that you guys just kind of came up with on your own. There were definitely probably like 75% of the things that you did were in line with what the book wanted you to do, or eventually the book expected you to do it. But there was a good chunk where you guys would just go, I'm gonna go do this. And they're like, okay, like go for it. The great thing about the book and running the book as a GM, I found, is that as long as you've read the whole thing, and I would encourage GMs, I always do encourage GMs to read the entire adventure before, but at least read the first book before. And you have like notes on different areas and different NPCs and stuff. You can easily just be like, oh, we're gonna do that now, and just kind of slot it in to whatever you guys are doing. So maybe it's a little too early by the book to do something, but you can just easily just kind of slot it in. The books are really set up to be something that takes place over time, which helps you to be able to be like, oh, we'll just fudge the timeline a little bit and it won't be a big deal. So I'm really interested in, because we haven't really talked too much. I mean, we've talked about our times with Strength 1000, but we haven't talked about like specific things that you guys have really enjoyed. So I'm really interested in like, I've heard you guys say how much you love this adventure. So I'm really curious in specifics of like, what's your favorite thing so far about this adventure?
Honestly, one of my favorite parts was meeting our other dormitory and other classmates. Just hearing about the NPCs and their, individual backgrounds and what they are doing made the world so much more approachable and more immersive, that I could think, hey, if I want to go see someone, I can go see Cheshire for whatever I need for mischief, If I want Anchorroot, of course, is, the best little friend that you could have. So anything that you need, you want to talk, go see Anchorroot.
But please don't die, because that would be so stressful for Anchorroot, and she deserves so much better than that.
Yeah, the NPCs in Strength 1000 are like really fleshed out in the GM material too. That was something I was really worried about going in, because it is such like a role play heavy campaign, but for GMs there is tons of background information, tons of resources to be able to flesh out those NPCs, and I think they're pretty distinct enough to keep them straight in your head too.
And you actually start to really care about the NPCs. I feel like with a lot of other campaigns, you care because they're somehow involved in the story of like the big bad, but here they are supposed to be your friends, your teachers, and they're still relevant. They're not just friends that you meet along the way, and they all have such a individual backstory of their own. They're all very separate people.
And since this AP is, it's expected to take many, many, many years in game, I'm really excited to see how the characters change and how our relationships to them change, how Natambu, the city that houses, the Magambia, the Magical Academy, changes over the course of, the next couple of years. That's something I'm really personally excited to see.
I think it's something I just find very interesting. I'm not completely sure if it's my favorite thing, but the fact that the AP just added the Academy subsystem, just added this whole mechanic that works really, really well with the story, doesn't overcomplicate things, but it gives you things too, and they're new and they're AP specific. And I think that that's really cool of an AP as a way to get players invested in the AP, because you're getting things, and you're getting things from you're not leveling up just from experience. There are things, and there is role play and quests that you go on in the AP that will further you in the subsystem, and I think they did that really well. And it's really cool to see that progress.
Yeah, the subsystem is really fun. For those who haven't read the book, the Academy subsystem are a separate set of rules that comes with the AP that describes your character's academic progress. So very early on in the first book, you will join sort of an organization within the Magambia, kind of like a Harry Potter house, though not quite like that. And throughout the adventure, you'll have certain opportunities where you use your skill proficiencies and you roll on those to see if you manage to progress your studies further. By doing so, you get certain feats and bonuses specific to whatever branch you chose to join. And so theoretically, you join your branch based on, your personality, your values. So it's just another way of sort of using feats to really define your character. And it's fun. It makes us feel like, we're in school and we have all the stress of a big exam. And I swear to God, only on these rolls do I roll poorly. I have anxiety, like test-induced roll anxiety? It's awful. I can never roll well on these things. I psych myself out the night before and never pass my exams.
Yeah, I think it's been like the perfect blend of roleplay and roleplay, where you really are being like studying and progressing in classes and things like that, but you could easily just be like, I'm rolling stats for this mechanical subsystem that I'm getting benefits from. And so it's this really nice balance of the roleplay leading to mechanical benefits. And I've been really impressed with how balanced it is. Like, it has not affected you guys being overpowered or anything like that in the sense you think it would, because you're already coming into the adventure with the free archetype that the adventure gives you. And then on top of that, they're giving you additional skills and, not really a spoiler, but maybe a free archetype. So you're getting ultimately 2 free archetypes from this adventure. And yeah, I've been impressed that it just really hasn't affected you guys in combat at all, or in those more mechanical situations.
Something I appreciate that we've done is at one point in this story, the players receive a mask, which is supposed to be, representative of your character and your progress throughout the academy. We decided to make these relics so that they give you additional little powers using the relic subsystem that's included in the Game Mastery Guide. So that's really helped to kind of dive into yet another subsystem that Pathfinder 2 offers, while giving you the chance to tie it to a character very easily. And customize it to kind of fit the flavor that you want and have the abilities to do the kind of things that you want to do with your character. I've greatly appreciated that as an item nerd.
Yeah, we had talked about using relics for a while. I think a lot of people were interested in using them. And so the mask seemed like a perfect opportunity to make something a relic that would clearly advance with your character, since it's introduced pretty early on in the adventure as something very connected to your character's like soul and spirit. It's a representation of your spirit inside of you, and that's how the adventure describes it, and that's basically how relics are described as well. And so I've seen a lot of people online also using them as relics, and there seems to be a lot of positive feedback from that. I haven't noticed any crazy problems with power. I've heard that concern online a lot when people are talking about turning them into relics, but I haven't noticed anything. And it's basically just treated, as far as I can see, as another magical item that the characters have. So I haven't noticed any big concerns, but it's just added a ton of connection to those masks for the characters, and a lot of like interest in that, obtaining that item for them.
So 2 of my favorite things for this AP are very opposite, but also interconnected. So of course, one of my favorite things has been the role play and fleshing out your character and thinking more about your character and making them a whole person. With all of the questions going to a school, NPCs will ask your character a lot of questions that you actually have to think about and can be very difficult. And I really like that, thinking about what my character would think, what my character would do in a situation, and how would they approach a problem. There's a lot of different mini quests that are not just hitting things. So you have to think about, what would my character do in this situation and how can I fix this? So besides fleshing out a character, I also really love the combat. This AP seems to have thrown a lot of different situations in combat at us that aren't your, just strict combat, let's kill this thing, especially because Magambia doesn't like you killing things. So we have to get creative with our solutions, which, even though fleshing out your character and combat are very opposite things, fleshing out your character helps you in those creative combat situations. Now I have astrology. I can use astrology as a feat to recall knowledge on, animals that we have never come across in combat. And it really helps. I now meditate in front of a crystal every morning and I freaking love it. And it's just another little aspect to my character that I can role play in the future.
I actually relate, as you mentioned, how the school doesn't like that your first answer is to kill things. And you can get creative. You don't have to just go in and take the penalty to do non-lethal damage and that'll be that. You can get really creative with it, and you do sometimes have the opportunity to kind of weigh, is this a situation in which that's kind of the only option, or is there a role play out of this, or is there something else that we can do? And you can really be creative in a lot of the situations that the AP puts you in, and I really like that because it just makes combat more interesting and more fun.
Yeah, it's such a refreshing change, I think, from every other adventure 2e versus 5e that we've played, where we're not going up against some ultimate evil BBEG type thing that's trying to, usher in an age of darkness and destroy the world. So you don't have that pressure to fight and kill. Most of the things that you fight can be talked to, can be reasoned with, creatively dealt with. And that's been such a wonderful just change of pace from anything I've ever done in TTRPG in general, beyond just, Pathfinder D&D. Like, I've never had where it's just, you're in class, you got to go do this thing, this person has it and doesn't want to give it to you, how do you get it without fighting them? And it's wonderful. It's such a nice change. It's definitely not the Murder Hobo campaign. It's whatever the opposite of that is.
Yeah, I've found you guys during combats talking more about how you want to resolve this combat. Like, is this a situation where you just kill them? It's created some interesting opportunities with one particular character that we have in our group who tends to want to kill them, and you kind of having that discussion of, no, we're not murdering someone today. But also, I think it's a really fun precedent to set in book one, where stakes aren't very high. It's you can just talk your way out of combat. You can just avoid this combat completely if you are smart about it and approach it with the right resources and things like that. And so I think it's going to be really fun to see how your characters take that when in book 5, when the stakes are a little higher, when things are a little, more important to the world kind of deal. And you see really how you interpret that as your characters.
Yeah, didn't we even go on a quest where we were supposed to fight things, but we just said, nah, let's not do that. We know Anchor Root, and we brought Anchor Root into the situation with us, and they just helped us out instead of us killing insects or something like that.
Yeah, it's there's a couple opportunities where the book's just just bring this NPC with you and you're fine.
So make friends with your classmates because they're helpful.
Yeah. It's nice to actually be rewarded for the level of roleplay that we do, for sure.
You can throw really, really good parties.
Really
more
good
friends
parties.
you make.
We get really serious about throwing birthday parties for each other, don't we? We love a good birthday party in an Inspire dorm.
We do have our, we get exchange gifts sometimes. We give each other gifts. Yeah.
We're very serious about our gifts.
Oh yeah.
Honestly, that's been one of my favorite parts, putting the time in, seeing people put the time and the thought into getting gifts that our characters would give and that the other character would like. It's sweet. I don't know. Touches my heart sometimes.
I like it. It's very interesting to see how each character shows their love for the other character and has very specific gifts.
So we were talking about combat earlier, and I think it might be a good time to bring up the fact that I am playing a superstitious barbarian in this campaign. They said it couldn't be done. I said nay. So my character hates magic and was sent to the Magambia in an effort to try to rid herself of the curse of magic for which she has. You know, she found herself producing flame one day, was kicked out of her tribe for having any magical aptitude, and is now in the Magabia to try to get rid of it. And you know, there's a whole kind of character arc that I have planned, or that I can see this going into, though I'm leaving my options open. However, I feel like this has been the campaign to do it, and despite it making zero sense thematically, we found a lot of really great role-playing opportunities out of that. And I think it really goes to show that you should build the characters you want and work with your group to fit that narrative in a way that is fun for everyone. Don't exclude any options just because you think it doesn't make sense in this specific setting.
You said it makes zero sense, but you actually give yourself some credit. You did put a lot of thought into your character and why they're actually at the Magambia, so give yourself a little bit of credit for that, for sure.
Oh yeah, but when I posted about this on the internet, everyone said that's a stupid idea, you should definitely not do that. And I said, okay, I definitely will now.
Well, write it
So
down. That's
Liam,
the first time the internet's been wrong about an opinion. I've never heard of that before. Who would have thought?
That seems the proper response to the internet, to be honest.
Yes.
yeah, Liam put a lot of work into his character, but Sabity also really put a lot of thought into how to handle a superstitious barbarian that thinks they're cursed. And I really love it. And seeing, Sabity have the professors figure out, okay, here's maybe this god that has cursed you. Maybe here's this god that has cursed you. And it has turned into, a lot of other mini quests kind of figuring out, hey, maybe this deity did in fact curse your character.
Yeah, and because the Mangabia is so developed, because so many areas of it have so much flavor and description with it, I find that all of our characters can kind of go off and do our own thing. So my character might be speaking with the professor, trying to do experiments on exactly what works and doesn't work to have effects on my magical powers. But every one of our characters, I think, at some point has gone off and just kind of did their own little mini quest, just because this area is so flavorful, so much description is added to it, that that's so easy to just tack on. And maybe that's in part because our wonderful GM, who puts a lot of time and effort into it, but still I feel like the campaign really leans into that kind of approach.
Yeah, you're gonna do something left field. I think the lesson here is talk with your GM. Don't just come to the table with something crazy and throw them for a loop.
Yeah, I've had a lot of talks because the adventure, I'm sure you guys know and are probably questioning, tells you that you should have a druid and wizard archetype. We've kind of thrown that out and just asked for it to be a wizard and druid archetype if you could. Most of the characters still do have either wizard or druid, but we opened it up a little bit. If it made more sense for your character not to, they could still be in the adventure, and I'll just rework things that I need to on my end. And I think it's really worked out, especially with kind of more experienced players, to be able to just have that freedom to play the character they want, and then us work together to build the story around them and make it make sense.
Something that's been interesting about this AP specifically is now that we do have a little more experience under our belts, I'm starting to understand kind of the intricacies of combat difficulty more. We were talking about this a little bit earlier, how in this AP it's a great one for kind of experimenting and trying out new things. The free archetype is an easy example of that. We all have this free archetype, but honestly, we've still been challenged by combat, and that doesn't mean that combat is so hard that despite having a free archetype, we still struggle. It means that having the free archetype doesn't necessarily add power to our characters. It just adds the amount of options we have. It might add a smidge of power, obviously, but as a whole, we have all these little things about our characters that is giving them a little bit more options in battle, and we're finding that it's still kept combat very interesting, complex, dynamic, and just really has opened up the doors for us in terms of more roleplay opportunities, which I've certainly enjoyed.
So, and now we're going to talk about things from a GM perspective, which means there's going to be quite a bit more spoilers involved. So if you are a player or plan to play, this might be a good time to stop listening. As Liam was talking about, the combats are still very difficult, and I found a lot online situations with newer GMs, with newer parties that are struggling with combat a lot, and I think it's largely because or the first 2 chapters of book 1, there's like basically no combat, and then you enter into a dungeon. That's been really difficult for new players and new GMs, where the players are just dying constantly. And so I would definitely suggest newer, parties to have more combat introduced in those first couple sections. Do some more Star Day tournaments, do some more side quests where combat would be required, so that the players can get experience with combat and understand how to play their characters before they're thrown into a dungeon in the 3rd chapter. Also, we were talking about birthday parties earlier, and as like a fun little thing in the book, Chazire is described as someone who would give birthday gifts. And so what I've done is any magical items they've missed out on in their adventures, since especially these early books are very magic item light, I've basically just had Chazire give them as birthday presents. And, it works well into the story, it works well into the roleplay, and they still don't miss out on those magical items that are, fun to play around with.
We appreciate that.
Yeah. And it also lessens that like pressure to go search everywhere, when they're just trying to have fun and play around and role play. You get distracted by the role play and don't search the room for magic items.
We've been playing Tiny Tina's Wonderland, and there's actually a mechanic in the game. I don't know if it's in all of the Borderlands, but if you miss an item, it goes to like the missed items box and it holds a certain amount. And I thought that's a really interesting mechanic. Sabity, hearing you say that, it's a kind of another way to express that same mechanic. I think that's interesting and a great idea.
Are there any like spoiler moments that you guys really enjoyed?
Well, that the conclusion of that dungeon definitely changed sort of the path that I thought I was going to take.
That was a big one.
Yeah.
I really like that dungeon. Like,
yeah. They're talking about the dead students. And yeah, it definitely, I think, hit the players the reality of the world they live in. They've been kind of in this nice utopia bubble for like the first part of the books, and then suddenly dead students. And
we've not been allowed to kill things, and then all of a sudden there are other dead students, and it's like, what happened?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I had been planning on, Seth had at that time Cascade Bearers and Emerald Bows, but after seeing that, decided that really my true calling was to protect the other players and the students that live in our dorm that I've met, that we've come to care about over the course of a year-ish in that first book. So switched to Tempest Sun Mage. I thought it was a really, really cool character moment as a player.
Yeah, I remember a moment, and just like throwing it in there as a warning, because I didn't anticipate such the strong response that you guys had. But there's a moment in that dungeon where you find a map that's like, we're going to attack Spire Dorm next to get these players. And your guys' immediate instinct was, we need to go back to our dorm to protect our dorm mates. And like the book it's like trying to imply that it's you guys that you are going in danger and going to be attacked. And obviously you're here, so you're fine. But your immediate thought was like, Essie and Anchorroot and Chazire and Ignacy are all in danger. We need to go help them. Because right before you guys had found that map, you had also found Ignacy like dying on the ground from an allergic reaction. So it was just like immediate, like, we need to go protect them. And so I had to kind of like pivot and a little railroad you guys a little bit, be like, no, you're fine. Like,
I remember that.
Okay. But it just really threw me for a loop. So maybe anticipate that, because I certainly didn't. The real
We're getting Inspire Dorm t-shirts.
Oh, yeah.
Inspired. Oh yeah, and they also have renamed, if you're confused, they have renamed the dorm Inspire Dorm.
Oh yes.
So it's a real creative
it's the theme
play
of our
on
parties,
words
guys.
Real creative, yeah. Real good.
On that note, Sabity, I know this is something that you and I have talked to offline a bit about, just the overall pacing, and that I think a lot of players coming into this who have a little experience in TTRPGs expect a fair, we're used to sort of linear stories that have some kind of impending clock that, drives the urgency. And I think there's been a couple of times where we've expected this AP, we're like, oh, we got to go get this done like right now, and the AP is really like, no, you've got months, years to do this, don't rush it. And we rush it and then go back and do all the side quests. So I don't know if you've got any tips for handling that, but I know there's been a couple of times where, as you just said, we've been like, we need to do this right now, and you're like, no, you really don't. You can take your time and do other things if you want.
Definitely different from a lot of the other APs that we've done, because you don't have time. The world's in peril. Everyone's about to die. The big bad's about to win. And now it's like, yeah, do this thing over the course of the next semester. No real time rush. And it definitely took a while for me to get there that is something that is fine.
Something I've enjoyed for sure has been because when we're told you have a week to do it, like you've got a week, 2 weeks of downtime before nothing's gonna happen or before anything's gonna happen. I found myself actually, instead of just doing your basic earn income to get myself 7 silver or anything like that, I'm like, no, my character's gonna go out and help, fortify the walls of the area or work on this obstacle course to kind of make it more complex, because I feel like those are the kind of things my character would be spending their free time doing. And I feel like it's very easy when we're playing, these TTRPG games, and we are given, there is a mechanic to earn income during the downtime. We tend to gamify those aspects a lot and just say, no, I do this. I want to get some more money. That's more important. But this AP has given us all, I feel like, a lot of breathing room in that regard. So I don't feel like I'm missing out by, spending my downtime not earning income. If I just want to screw off and do things I think my character would do, I totally have that option. And that's helped me better conceptualize what my character would be doing in this universe and how they're developing their own personal character arc.
I mean, my character has still earned income, but by reading tarot cards. So,
you can do both.
And honestly, my suggestion for GMs is honestly just to have that conversation. Be like, this AP is a lot slower paced, especially at the beginning, while you guys are in school, and just encourage your players to take that time and not expect a huge rush for a lot of the adventure. Because I tried to hint at it and it wasn't enough. So just honestly, just have that conversation with your players and make it very clear that you will know when there is a time crunch.
This is going to vary group to group, but I know for our group, really the more information we're given that's not spoilery, the better. I think that helps set expectations. That helps get everyone on the same page. And I'm very pro now at this point. Just go over anything that's not a spoiler about the campaign with your players or your group and just go from there. So as we're finishing up here, what would be anyone's last thoughts or takeaways from the book 1 of this AP?
For me, I think it's honestly been my most favorite adventure to run, and I've run quite a few adventures, and it's so roleplay heavy, which was very overwhelming for me at first, but the book really helps you along, and as long as you prep a little bit, like, you'll be fine.
I have never had more fun in any TTRPG. Just absolutely loving this. Granted, as a player, I love the roleplay, love the lore of the world. That's what I get out of these games most. So it's a perfect adventure, especially for me. I love how different, there's no other AP like this. It is such a sea change from anything else I've done before. So it has been just an absolute breath of fresh air. It's been phenomenal. If you like role-playing, you'll absolutely love this.
Yeah, to branch off that, I 100% agree. I feel like if you were a role-play oriented group, this would be an excellent introduction to Pathfinder 2e or a great next AP to check out. It's really what you make it, and I think in that freedom lies a lot of player agency to determine exactly what you want your campaign to look like, and having that ability to determine that with my group as we go along has been my favorite part of it.
Yeah, I would say for this AP, get creative, do whatever you want. If you've been wanting to try out a different class than you've done before, go do it. And, doing this AP for me also, I mean, in our last AP, I played an alchemist, and I very much wanted the damage, items and combat and everything like that. Whereas now I'm playing a sorcerer, and I'm forcing myself to be more creative and branch out into, not combat or damage heavy spells or feats or archetypes. So I'm getting more creative with my character, and I really like it, and it's forcing me to think differently.
It's a great point that since the plot is rarely advanced by combat, you get a little more freedom to pick some of those archetypes that don't have a direct combat sort of focus, where you can exactly, you can take some of the archetypes that are more out of combat, affect your downtime, affect, your skills, rather than pick things that are going to have, a direct impact in combat, which is really, really cool.
It's a great campaign. Come to the Magambia. It's a fun school, and you'll enjoy yourselves.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us in our review of the first book of Strength of Thousands. Check it out. Yeah, available now online wherever books are sold. From all of us online at Sixers, thank you for joining us, and you have a wonderful day. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, Mom.
I like that it turned into an advertisement for the Magambia.
Of course.